Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. My first time here. What a blessing. This, you guys have such heart here, and I felt it even before I walked in the door. Um, can you take a moment with me to send a special blessing to everybody who's listening from home? Anybody who can't be here but wants to be here? Reverend Eileen? Anybody that's in your heart right now? Can we just do that together? Let's just imagine those people that they're with us. That you're all with us, and that they're covered by the beauty and the heart of our togetherness and the spirit that connects all of us. May there be a special blessing for all those who are with us in spirit. So it is. We were already in conversation before I walked through your door. The living intelligence that moves through us does not stop at the walls of any building or the edges of any tradition. It runs underneath them all. This is what Jesus called the living water. It can reveal itself at any time. But in my experience, it reveals itself most readily, not to those who are most certain, but to those who are willing, even for just a moment, to not know. Which brings me to Thomas. I know some of us carry complicated feelings about church, real ones earned through real experiences. And I want to honor that before I ask you to look more closely with me at a gospel story. I've spent my life studying religion, not just one tradition, but many traditions, cross-cultural mythology, and the mystical streams running underneath the institutional forms of every great tradition. And what I've found again and again is that when I set aside what the institution made of a story and look at what the story itself is saying, now I find something far more alive than what I was handed. Anyone else? So this is the invitation for all of us right now, to bring even your doubt, like Thomas did, right into the room. Because when I did that, what I found changed something in me that had been stuck for years. So it began with a simple question Thomas asked in an upper room like this one, 2,000 years ago, that I think he may have been asking on behalf of all of us. Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way? So we've called him Doubting Thomas, right? All these years as a caution, as though doubt were a character flaw, something to be ashamed of and overcome. But if you slow down just for a moment with me, let's look at what Thomas actually does in that moment. It's Thomas who speaks up, who says what everyone else in the room is probably already thinking but doesn't dare to say. His honesty, his willingness to admit that he doesn't understand, becomes the opening through which Jesus speaks one of the most luminous things he ever said. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Thomas didn't block the revelation through his question. He midwifed it. And later, when the risen Christ appears to Thomas and Thomas says, unless I see, unless I touch. Well, a minister I respect once offered a reframe that I haven't forgotten. Rather than seeing Thomas as a poor, doubting man, consider that he may have received one of the greatest transmissions of all. Because when he asked, Jesus didn't rebuke him or pull away from him. He said, come, touch the wounds, see for yourself. So many of the others believed on testimony, but Thomas believed through direct experience, directly touching. His doubt didn't keep him from Christ, from the truth. It brought him closer. Ernest Holmes, the very founder of this center's teaching, understood this. We're told that his most often words as a young man were, why? and how. So, right? His curiosity followed him into church, where he questioned the ministers about their theology. And he didn't accept what he was handed. He pressed through towards something living underneath, right? He was, in other words, a little bit like Thomas. Definitely a lot like me, and probably a lot like a lot of you out there, I would imagine. Yes. So, this is what I want to say. In its earliest moment, doubt is not really doubt at all. It's simply not knowing. It's uncertainty. It's a gap in the map. It's the moment before the mind rushes in to paper over the crack with something familiar. It's Thomas saying, I don't understand. It's a child asking a question. If we can stay there just long enough, that not knowing becomes a question. And a question is a quest. It's a quest that I am on. Ernest Holmes wrote, knowledge is of the intellect. Wisdom and understanding are of the heart. When we turn not knowing into a question, a curiosity, a willingness to be with that tender vulnerability of not knowing, we move from the intellect into the heart. And that territory, this living, luminous reality that connects all of us, this love that connects all of us, begins to reveal itself, right? As it's always been trying to do. Jesus said it plainly, ask and you shall receive. Seek and you shall find. Knock and the door shall be open to you. He wasn't just talking about prayer. He was describing a whole way of moving through life, a posture of holy curiosity. An openness to being shown more than what we currently can see. My doctor once said something that I had never heard before, strangely. I was dealing with postnasal drip, and she prescribed something mild. Then she said, take it at first sign. Not when you're flattened, take it at the first sign. I'd always waited until I was completely undone, as though I needed to earn the intervention by all my suffering. What she was teaching me was simple. The body whispers before it shouts. If you learn to hear the whisper, you might never have to endure the shout. Doubt is no different. Catch it early before it travels, before it curdles, and something remarkable becomes possible. Something unforeseeable reveals itself. And here's what I've learned as a researcher and as a meditator. It's not only about catching doubt early, it's about meeting it at its root, going to the place beneath the story, before the mind has named it, limited it, and decided what it means. So as a researcher, this is how I work. I learn to follow the instinct rising right at the edge of my not knowing, and to turn my confusion, my curiosity, sometimes my rage, actually. Why? My discomfort with authority, actually to meet it right there and turn my confusion into a question, and to let that question guide me to the right people, the right texts, the right words, ideas, resources, images, ideas that I wouldn't have found if I'd already decided what I was looking at. I needed to be curious. And as a meditator, for me, this is the practice, not bypassing the discomfort that comes up, whether it's emotional or physical, but going to the place underneath it, to what is actually present before the mind has papered over it with the story. And when I go there, something becomes available, a stream of possibility, a life force that was always there, waiting to be encountered. And here's what I've learned, come to believe about doubt, is that it doesn't come pre-labeled. It's not like there's a good kind of doubt and a bad kind of doubt. It's more about how we meet the doubt. All it is a moment of not knowing, a gap in the map. But if the ego grabs it, what happens? It becomes a story. You're not enough. You've gone too far. Your dream was an illusion. you should have known better, right? And you can just add on to the list. And that story, if we don't catch it, becomes a heavy weight. And it's a weight that we look through the rest of the day or the rest of our life through. But if we catch it early in that first whisper, before the shout, something else becomes possible. When we can pause at the threshold of not knowing, when we can embrace ourselves in the actual vulnerability of that moment, and then maybe we can ask, what are you trying to show me? What's here that I can't yet see? That question changes everything. It turns a moment of not knowing from a threat into an invitation, maybe even an adventure. Turns it from a wall into a door. So I just wanted to give us a moment to practice that for ourselves, just a moment. So if you want to, you can close your eyes, and if not, you can keep them open. But just take a moment to think about a doubt that you have in your life, an anxiety, a confusion, something that has you stumped, or maybe a little frustrated. And feel in your body, where do you feel that? It's in your heart, it's in your belly, it's in your head. And if you want, you can put your hand there. And take a deep breath with yourself, with your doubt, with your anxiety, whatever it is. And say to yourself silently, it's okay not to know. It's okay not to know. And as you relax a little bit, you notice, you can ask, what is it that life wants to show me here? And just pause for one moment. Ask that question, life, what do you want to show me? And see what comes to you. And take a deep breath. So I had my whole talk prepared this morning, and then I sat down to meditate. And I said, I need to do a practice right now. I practice what I'm talking about. So I did what I just asked you guys to do, right? And suddenly I heard this inner voice say, you're hungry for the bread of life. And I heard it in a way that I've never heard it before. It was to say, I'm hungry for being part of something. I'm hungry for the nourishment that comes in being here with all of you. Not being up here like a speaker with all these initials after my name, not being somebody who gets it right, but being with you and being in relationship. To me, that's where the nourishment is. And yet I've spent so much of my life, I started giving talks when I was 7 years old. I was up in the church, I mean a big church, like big. And I was this little guy who had to step up on a stool, to read. But I had to do it perfect. I had to be just right about it. And there was this crushing pressure inside of me about it. And what I realized this morning was that the Spirit had come to me and said, I want you to feel, I want that child part of you that feels you have to get it right to actually feel welcome, to feel like you're part of something. You don't have to get it right. So that nourishment came to me because I took one moment to admit that I felt a little bit nervous about coming to a new place and speaking to people that I didn't know. So I'll be curious to hear what came for you. And I invite us to share in coffee hour or at brunch when you go out with your friends, just to think about what's the doubt that's coming up in my life and what's life maybe trying to show me. Sound good?
Yes.
Okay. So I want to take a moment to think about this even a little more deeply, because I know some doubts are not just simple passing things. Sometimes it's a weight, it's a heavy weight that comes up in your life when you get to the end of a map and you're in a territory where you never expected to be, right? Where this dream that you had seems like it's not coming to fruition. Anybody had that experience?
Oh, yeah.
Or when you're in a relationship and suddenly it reveals a face that you never would have expected it to do. So the invitation is the same. It's the same. The opportunity is the same. But it's not always as easy. to get to that doorway that we've been talking about. So I want to just stay with that for one moment. These places where doubt presses on your chest, or it feels like it wakes you up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. And you might even say to yourself, was any of this real? Right? So we all know this. Sometimes in spiritual practices or spiritual communities, there can be a temptation to move a little too quickly through that, to go toward the prayer, the affirmation, to protect ourselves from the feeling of that doubt. Anybody experienced that ever?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't want to skip that. Before we talk about butterflies, I want to talk about the cocoon. All right? So when the caterpillar enters the chrysalis, it dissolves. It doesn't just break down and rearrange. It dissolves completely into an unrecognizable soup. Did you know that? The scientists actually call it soup. So inside of this dissolution, there are these cells. They're called imaginal cells. Okay? And when they carry the blueprint of what this caterpillar is supposed to become. They've always been there, but they've been waiting for the moment for this dissolution to be so complete that they can start to gather together and form into what this is supposed to be, a butterfly, right? But guess what? This is the interesting part. The immune system of the caterpillar starts to attack those cells because they're different. They're new. They don't match the current pattern. Sound familiar?
Anxiety.
So I know this from the inside. I was in graduate school and I was standing on this sheet of rock above the ocean. I had invested tens of thousands of dollars in this dream that I had, and I was kind of creating my curriculum as I was walking forward on it. The pressure was complete and total, but I came to understand that that pressure was actually not the enemy. That pressure was something pushing me beyond who I thought I was. Maybe even pushing me beyond what anybody thought they were, what we thought we could become, right? But I'm not, but in the moment, it didn't feel that way. It felt like pressure. And then there was the bulb. Last fall, we had a retreat in our church, a contemplative day-long silent retreat. And I suggested, why don't we plant bulbs with an intention? We'll make a little banner and we'll put our intention. And one of the guys in the church said, well, I'll make a planter. And we can put all of our bulbs in this planter. And we can then, through the winter, when it gets tough, we can see our flowers growing and we can see the progress. We can look at our prayer and we can remember it and we can support each other in our prayers. And also, why don't we give each person a little one to take home? So we made 2 prayer flags, put them with our bulbs in the church and outside, take them home. All these people, I'm looking at church, all these people's flowers are coming up. They're blossoming. Mine is doing nothing. Mine at home, doing nothing. Everybody's coming back. Oh, they're so beautiful. The daffodil is so beautiful. And my doubt starts spinning. Is any of what I'm talking about even true? Like, I mean, it's not like doubt doesn't just stay in one place, like spreads everywhere. I start doubting why I should even be talking about these things, right? Do I have the ability to tend to anything?
Is this a sign?
Is this a sign? Well, next thing you know, like all these other people's are kind of like falling away, and mine start coming out. Mine are still out. The one I have at home has 7 blooms on it. And most people are like, oh, mine are long gone. So what I wanted to say about this is that a deep prayer may take a long time to break the surface. You know that? That doesn't mean you're failing. It means that the bulb is rooting. The deeper the prayer, the deeper the root system must form before anything can become visible. It needs to root down deeper for it to grow up. A tourist moves through the landscape collecting experiences, remaining relatively unchanged, but a pilgrim is changed by the journey. The wilderness, the dissolution, the not blooming, the 3 in the morning waking up anxiety, that's not a detour from the pilgrimage. That is the pilgrimage. Holmes wrote, Within us is the unborn possibility of limitless experience. Ours is the privilege of giving birth to it. Now, I realize that we might receive that as a beautiful metaphor, but anybody who, let's slow down for just one moment. Any mothers in the room? Yeah, right? Okay, so on this Mother's Day, we know there are people in this room and on this video here who know that giving birth is not a gentle, poetic idea. Am I right? I asked a friend about it yesterday. I said, "What's it really like?" And she said, you can't even imagine it, the pain. So it's pressure, it's fear, it's intense contraction before release, right? She said the pain was so much, it's like you feel it through your entire body. It's the body doing something it's never done before, and it has no guarantee. There's no guarantee. But I've seen motherhood change a person. Not just their circumstances, but the very nature of who they are. Yeah? To every mother here, and to every person who has carried what felt like an impossible prayer, you might be carrying one right now, who's birthed something through years of pressure and doubt and not yet blooming, Holmes was writing about you. The unborn possibility, still underground, still in the soup, but not abandoned, never abandoned. In some ways, oh, and here, the blueprint's there. It's just waiting for the time to form, take its form. But here's the thing, I feel like in some ways, learning to meet our doubts right at the door, not to deny them, to invite wonder and curiosity and question is what enables us to actually get through it step by step. So how do we do all this? Not as philosophy, as practice, available to us in both those great dissolutions that are happening in our lives, those big thresholds that we're crossing, and the small ones that we face day to day. The living water that Jesus spoke of, this living intelligence that connects all of us, this water that never runs dry, is not somewhere else. It runs underneath the surface of every moment that we're willing to look a little closer. It lives in the crack in the map. It lives in the debut of doubt, the earliest, freshest, most honest moment of vulnerability before we close it. In any moment, when you notice the ground shifting in yourself, in a relationship, in your community, when the old explanation no longer fits, when you notice yourself assuming that you already know what another person means, which is usually not something good, when you think you know what a situation is or what God is or isn't doing, anybody? What if you paused? What if you just took a breath and you had just a moment of skepticism towards yourself, towards your mind, that thinks it knows what the answer is? And what if you let yourself sit in the soup of the not knowing, of the open question? And then, yeah, and see what moves. Because maybe even before you ask a question, just notice what comes. But then maybe you want to ask a question. What are you trying to show me that I haven't yet seen? Huh. Yeah. And be open to hearing and receiving the message. What's here that I've been looking past? What's alive in this moment that I've taken for granted? Ask and you shall receive. Seek and you shall find. Knock and the door shall be open. He wasn't just talking about prayer. He was talking about the debut of doubt. That moment, having the courage to be with the vulnerability of not knowing. Having the courage to say out loud, I do not understand. I don't. Wow. What magic can come from that? Holmes lived it, didn't he? Pressing through the institution, pressing through the comfortable answer, meeting his not knowing again and again until it led him somewhere so alive That's what we're drinking from today, aren't we? And the caterpillar. This is the debut of doubt in its fullest expression. It has to completely lose itself to become what it's meant to become. Now, I know you guys have been going through changes in this community. What could it become if we let go? We let it be. We let ourselves be with the vulnerability of it. And we remain open to what God could do, what that spirit can do, what that living intelligence can do, and see how it shapes us and how it moves us forward. So here's the thing, you're not failing when you're in the soup. You're not lost when you're in the wilderness. What if that's true? You're not broken when your bloom hasn't come out yet. You're rooting deeper. You're becoming something that you weren't before. You're being selected. This is science language. You're being selected by life itself, by love itself, to become something that your current form can't even conceive of. So on this Mother's Day, I'm thinking about the particular courage that it takes to love something so completely that your doubt about your own adequacy never quite goes away. Anybody ever felt that as a mother, as somebody who stewards a community, as somebody who writes and gives talks? The doubt about your own adequacy, maybe it never goes away, but you know what I think? I think that's not weakness. I think that speaks to the depth of your prayer, the depth of your commitment to life and love.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so my suggestion is to go gently, to pause, to have a little bit of skepticism about what your mind tells you, to stay curious and embrace the vulnerability, and ask the question with an openness to receive the answer. What I learned from this experience was that the living water flows through the crack. It flows through the not knowing, through the debut of doubt itself. It's flowing right now. And I would just invite all of us to slow down enough to taste it. Thank you.
Thank you.